PC building season is well and truly upon us, and with so many great deals on PC parts right now, building a system around a reasonable price point has never been easier. And in this video, I'm going to walk you guys through the best $1,000 gaming PC you can assemble right now, using brand new off-the-shelf components. I'll be walking you guys through why I picked the parts I did, some alternative choices to consider too, and looking at performance a little bit later, after I've assembled the whole thing step by step. Let's do this. I'm going to kick things off by installing as many parts as possible into the motherboard first of all, which means moving the GPU out of the way, more on that a bit later, and also moving the case choice out onto the desk behind me. Just broken the box. Now, motherboard-wise, I've picked this, the ASRock A620M PRO RS. Now, the A620 chipset is AMD's new super budget-friendly chipset. While it certainly has its downsides, you don't get overclocking for the CPU, you don't get the best power delivery available, there are also some significant upsides too. It's not going to impact our gaming performance, it's great value, and you still get DDR5 memory support, Gen 4 NVMe slots, and a decent I/O, which in this board includes Wi-Fi, Ethernet, USB 3.2 Type-C, and 3.2 Type-A. It also, of course, supports the Ryzen 5 processor I've picked up for this build, in particular, the Ryzen 5 7600. This is basically a slightly slower version of the 7600X. You still get 6 cores, 12 threads, and the awesome Zen 4 architecture. It really ticks a lot of boxes. Intel options at this price point are also worth considering. The i5-13400F is a decent shout, but in my mind, this is a slightly better option. Taking a look at the CPU, and you'll notice there's a little golden triangle on the bottom in the corner. You need to line this up with the triangle on the CPU socket, in the top left just here. Push the retention arm of the socket down and out, lift the lid of the socket, and then drop the processor into place. Our Ryzen text is going to read upright, making this stage of the build a little bit easier. Add the arm back into place, the black plastic will become displaced, and the CPU is installed. I'm going to add the cooler in just a few moments. Before that, there are some other parts I can quite easily tick off. Corsair's Vengeance RGB DDR5 is the first of those. This is a 32 gig kit. Various speeds are available, of course the faster the better, and newer RAM DIMMs on the DDR5 architecture do come with much lower cache latencies, something early DDR5 kits certainly struggled with. Talking of memory, I'm also going to add in the long-term storage at this stage using this M.2 slot just here. For this stage of the build, you need a teeny tiny screwdriver, so get rid of the big Phillips head for now, and remove the M.2 heatsink, a little something like so. This is of course going to keep the M.2 drive cool once it's installed, and also looks aesthetically, I suppose, a little bit better than having a standalone M.2 drive with nothing on top. This particular drive is the WD Black SN850. This or the SN850X are both fine, and the 1TB version of this drive is astonishingly cheap nowadays. We're talking well under that $100 price point, which makes a drive like this an awesome value proposition. Line the M.2 drive up, and then add the M.2 heatsink back into place. A little something like this. Couple of screws, they are magnetic as you can evidently tell, will secure the drive into place and stop the shield from going anywhere. Once all these bits are in the motherboard, there's only really one thing left to do, and that's add in the CPU cooler. Now technically, because we're not really overclocking the Ryzen 5 7600, we could use the stock cooler, but I just don't think it's really recommendable when you can buy something like this, the Hyper 212 Black Edition, for, what's this go for nowadays? Like $40. I'll link latest price and availability for everything at the affiliate links down below, as it does change, especially at the moment, quite fluidly. Now, if we take a look at the actual cooler box, we've got the black fan, no RGB, no extra goodies, just nice and simple. And then also all of the mounting hardware the cooler needs to actually be installed. Now I'm saying this, I have no idea how I get the cooler out. Presumably just removing all this, right, that makes sense. That goes back in. This might actually be quite clever. Then a bit of cardboard just protects the heat fins, or sort of heat sink if you will. And you can see how the cooler is going to sit on here, look pretty nice, and also keep the chip nice and chilly. For any CPU cooler installation, you want to refer to the manual. That's the warranty information. The manual is hiding in here, and to be fair, for AMD processors, looks quite simple. Looking at the manual, and you can see here, we just remove the included AMD brackets and add these Cooler Master brackets. They're going to screw directly into the holes on the motherboard, meaning the installation is actually genuinely pretty simple. A quick dab of thermal paste, large grain of rice size, that'll do. And then the cooler itself should slot into place nice and easily. Tighten up each of the screws and add the fan back on later, and with that, the CPU cooler is nicely installed. And once that's all done, the motherboard assembly is basically complete, and the next part is the case. You remember that case box that we ripped earlier? I don't know why I'm shouting, my microphones are wireless nowadays, and come with me. This is the new Cooler Master Q300L V2, and in many respects, this is a bit of a nostalgic build for me. Some of my first and most popular budget builds on the channel were with the original Q300L. This is the new version. Cooler Master have revisited it, remastered it, and hopefully made it better. The one clever thing about this case from like a cost saving point of view is that basically what it is just the chassis of a case without any exterior panels. Instead, these dust filters on the top and the front make up the exterior design. In fact, the front dust filter is nicely in this package, and you can see they're actually magnetic, so they just clip on a little something like this. Back in the day, Cooler Master actually made some custom GeekaWhat panels for this very case, which were really, really quite cool. They've updated a few things. They've changed the acrylic panel to tempered glass, thank goodness. And much like last time, you can actually lay this case down flat as like a flat system, or you can have it upright. I think we're probably going to go upright. All of your IOs on the front, they've obviously updated the IO. You've got power, 2 USB 3s, and a USB Type-C. Only the one fan still, but otherwise, pretty simple, pretty basic, and not too bad. The budget case market has changed a lot since Cooler Master were last in this area, and there are other good options, like the Montage Air, for example. So we'll have to see how this thing holds up. My gut instinct is with this so far is that it's good, but that Cooler Master need to bring that MSRP price point right down in order for this to have the reputation that its predecessor, the original Q300L V1, had back in the day. With the case laid down flat, I'm just going to go ahead and slide the motherboard in, make sure the fan cable isn't trapped. Built-in rear IO shield makes life a little bit easier here. There we go. A couple of screws into the motherboard, and that will stop the whole build from basically going anywhere. The next port of call then is to go ahead and add, I think, the graphics card into what is a fairly compact build. Now, the GPU market is in a bit of a weird state, really. You've got AMD and Nvidia have both basically finished their 7,000 and 4,000 lineup of cards. The last gen options are also still available, so we kind of know where things sit. But the 4060, 4060 Ti, AMD RX 7600 are all the cards that you would typically buy for a build like this, but haven't reviewed or benchmarked particularly well, both in terms of our content and that of others. Nvidia's latest cards in particular have gone down pretty appallingly, which is where this comes in. It's the Sapphire Pulse RX 6750 XT. Yes, it is last generation. Yes, it has come down in price hugely since it first launched. And yes, it has kind of been replaced by the AMD RX 7700 XT. However, it's still the best option. Let me explain why. You can get this for between $300 and $350 US. As mentioned previously, prices are changing a lot, so check the latest links and availability down below. But with 12 gigabytes of video memory, a fairly power efficient design and great price point, awesome performance at 1440p and 1080p, it makes a lot of sense. One thing I'm not hugely a fan of in this Cooler Master case is the rear PCIe slot covers. They're the type that you have to snap off, which is really not particularly good, especially in a modern case nowadays. Come on, Cooler Master, I think you can probably do a little bit better than that. Remove this cover here, and then remove the first and second PCIe covers themselves to make room for the GPU. It's then a simple case of pushing back the clip on the PCIe retention slot, sliding the GPU into place. It only just fits actually in this case. Applying a bit of pressure, and that will click nice and easily. Couple of screws, return the cover, GPU's installed, and of course I'll add all the power cables in just a moment. At this stage of the build, I'm also going to add in a couple of 120mm RGB fans up front to give the system a bit more wow factor and a bit more airflow, and then of course pop the power supply in. I did recently receive, where's it gone? Cooler Master's new XG Plus 850 Platinum, but it is way overkill for this build. It's got like a cool little screen on, which you'll be able to see here, but it's just not going to work price-wise. So instead, I'm going to pop something cheaper in alongside the fans at the front. I'd love to see Cooler Master do an RGB version of this case with RGB fans included, especially if they want to rival other chassis at this price point. Let me pop the power supply in, get everything wired up though, and then boot this thing up and see if it turns on first time. And once all those bits are in, I can finally turn it on, in theory. Reseated the front panel cable. That's fixed it. Looks pretty good at the front, I think. Looks pretty good on the side. Oh, we got a Windows screen. It's cycled through the errors. We're into Windows 11, and apparently it's gone off now. 6:42 on a Friday, April morning. That isn't right. Either way, I'm going to fix the date, fix the time, and check out the performance of this thing in a moment. First, it's time for an epic montage in the only way we know how. See you in a sec. With the system built and looking pretty good, the next step is to take a look at performance. And why not boot up Starfield first of all to see just how well this system performs when it's pushed to its limits. At 1440p high settings, the build achieves 68 FPS on average. Not bad when you consider Starfield's poor optimizations, poor drivers, and overall trickiness to actually run on basically any system. Move through into Hogwarts Legacy at 1440p high, which is perhaps a more representative test, and the build achieved 83 FPS on average. 90 and 99 percentile results look good too, and were tested as usual with MSI Afterburner's Riva Tuner and NVIDIA FrameView. In Warzone 2 at 1440p high with FSR enabled and set to the quality preset, frame rate jumped up significantly to 126 FPS on average. No doubt at 1080p or even 1440p lower settings, you'd get towards and break that 150 FPS mark on average. While games like Fortnite at 1080p competitive settings rather unsurprisingly deliver 277 FPS on average. Wow, running Fortnite on this thing is not going to be a problem. Apex Legends at 1440p high delivered 161 FPS on average, 147 and 124 for the 90 and 99 percentiles, so not too many frames dropped, pretty consistent overall, while Overwatch 2 rounds up our testing with 1440p Ultra in the refreshed Overwatch title, delivering 202 FPS. Not a bad showing from all of the games that we tested and of course from the system as a whole. I'm still undecided on this refresh Cooler Master Q300L case, but the rest of the stuff for this build has performed really well and is certainly recommended for those of you looking to get gaming on a budget. I'll leave latest pricing and availability to all the parts linked in the description below. Thanks for watching though, and as always, we'll see you next time.